Hello, Janice.
Hi, Anthony.
Today we're going to talk about why selling artwork is so hard, especially in probate. So lately, I've been reading a lot about how artwork is a cool investment. It's a great way to diversify your assets. And this may be a good idea as an investment, but as an executor, I've just seen so much, and I can share with you 5 reasons why it's really hard to sell or liquidate your artwork, especially in probate. And at the end of those 5 reasons, I'll also list 2 tips on how to make selling your artwork a little easier if you actually are in a probate type situation. But before we jump in, I want to make sure we lay the groundwork here. We're not really talking about Picasso's or Van Gogh's or the Mona Lisa or anything just in that super high echelon of artwork. Rather, things that have some value. You know, there is like a middle ground or the middle class of art. Oh gosh, I'm sure the artist would love me saying that, but pieces that are in the several thousands or maybe tens of thousands of dollars, but not anywhere beyond that. So that's the universe we're talking about here. Does that make sense, Janice?
It does. And I'm really thankful you picked 5 reasons that it's hard, because I could probably think of 25. So
let's narrow the field. And Janice is speaking from her experience and helping me with some estates where this has come up. And it's a struggle, even for us who do this on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first reason, number one reason why it's tricky to sell artwork, especially in probate, the marketplace is it's a little bit of a funny animal. The number one rule is you cannot flood the marketplace with pieces from a particular artist, because it's sort of like a supply and demand type situation where if the marketplace sees that 4, 5, 6 pieces are coming out and are available for purchase from the same artist, that devalues the scarcity or the uniqueness or the rarity of that given artist. So you don't want to do that.
No. And what you said, it could take time to sell it if you're going to sell one at a time over years. And we've already talked about how long it is to do an estate and to probate. When you're now adding on one piece at a time for over a long time, that adds up.
And we're not, so when Janice brings up a good point, we're not talking about selling them one at a time, or not only selling one at a time, but letting them leak onto the market one at a time. So you put piece number 1 on the market, and it takes months before you get a good nibble, a good bite from a buyer.
Right, right.
And only when that sale has consummated, you might even want to wait a little bit, give it a little bit more breathing room before you even release the next piece for sale and put it out there, make it available. So the purchases may take quite a bit of time, but it's even longer than that because you're not even putting them on the market for several months apart. Makes sense?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Hi, Kat.
My friend. On another podcast, working from home. Yes.
So the second reason why selling artwork in probate is tricky is galleries are way pickier than we thought, you know?
Oh, yes. Yes, very.
So there's no, Craigslist or eBay or just these liquid marketplaces for artwork. So you usually have to go through an auction house or a gallery, and they have a carrying cost. I mean, they have their business to run too, so they need to make select decisions. They need to make sure it's worth it for them to carry pieces in their gallery or in their catalog for the auction house. So they're often pretty darn picky.
Right, but they want to sell it. I mean, they want to take stuff that's going to sell. It's going to make them money. It's they have to do the cost benefit for themselves as well. So
just you can. It's not like what's an example? It's not like electronics or even furniture or things that are more fungible, where you can go on to. What are some examples, Janice, besides Craigslist and eBay? There's all these sites that
you can sell anything online, even Facebook Marketplace. If you find something you want to sell, you can try to sell something. Yes, but again, with the art, it's trickier because you're going after a different demographic, different market than just selling a couch or furniture. Yes.
Okay, so the third reason selling art can be tricky is the auction and consignment fees.
Yes.
So this is a lot different than eBay, which is 2% of the transaction.
Yeah,
I keep referencing eBay like it's the same thing, but just more people are familiar with eBay.
Right. It's kind of the same concept of you're paying a percentage to have it listed, yes.
Correct. But auction houses and galleries will have consignment fees, which just call those listing fees if you don't know what consignment means. And those can be 15%, maybe even as high as 30%, maybe even higher of the value of what the art actually sells for. So if you thought a real estate broker, taking 6% was expensive, I mean, 15 or 30%, that's like...
It's quite significant. Yeah. Can I give an example of?
Sure. Please.
So we're dealing with this, and we have some art. This comes up. It does. But if you think about it, right now we have a collection, I guess you could say, of about 25 pieces, and it's listed at a certain amount. But we could only find an auction house that would take a few. So when you do the math, you figure on the high end, let's say 10,000, low end 7,000, because they give you that medium area where it could go for really high, really low. But you figure they take a reserve, meaning they're not going to sell it for any less than a certain amount, which is 75% of the lowest number. Okay, so now we're going down a little. So then let's say they all sell. You're lucky they all sell. Mm-hmm. Then you've got to take commission off everything, which is 15% at minimum. Right. So it could be 20, it could be 30. So now you're talking 15%. So right there alone, now we're getting even lower. And then you have fees for each one because you have to photograph them. You have to put them online. And you have to pick them up. So right there's another 500 that I told you. So that lot that was originally worth, maybe 10,000, the lower end 7,000. By the time you knock everything off in insurance, you're looking at maybe 4,000 if they all sell. So it's an interesting concept of, you have this art that is valued pretty high, but by the time you start adding everything in, you're looking at a lot less.
I mean, your example was at 10,000. Let's say the piece sells or lists at 5,000 or something even a little lower, then that $500 pickup fee is like, a much higher percentage of the total sales price. So
correct.
Those fees can really chip away at your net, the lower the value of the art is. So
correct. And if you don't sell, there is a fee to return them. Because they have to keep them. You figure you have to keep them in a safe place. You have to,
and we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't just throw them in an Uber and send them back. I mean, you have to correctly transport them, and so it does cost money.
We're going to jump back onto transport and storage in a minute, but first, the fourth reason why liquidating art is a struggle is because of fraud.
Yes,
it is really there's a thriving market of fake paintings, essentially. So how do you prove that your painting is legit, is real? One way is to have the certificate of authenticity. That's, but in the States especially, dude, we don't know. It's when folks here. Let me explain to the folks out there. When folks pass away, the surviving family doesn't know where everything is. It's just
correct.
That just is not how it works.
I don't know where everything is, and I'm still here. I don't know where I put all my documents. They're somewhere, so it's going to be fun if someone looks through.
So even if the owner had a certificate of authenticity before he or she passed away, we may not be able to find it as the executors or heirs.
Right.
So this is a real problem.
It is.
So, I mean, and just as my little aside, this is a problem that is perfect for blockchain to resolve. For those who are not familiar, the trustless verification technology, where you don't need gatekeepers authenticating transactions. I think I did a pretty good job of explaining that. Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yes.
Okay, so the last reason why selling and liquidating artwork stinks is a struggle is because of storage and transport, which Janice, you brought up before.
Yes.
Where is this artwork sitting while we're figuring out what to do? I mean, if these are paintings, these are not your kids' finger paintings. These things have value to them.
These are real paintings from the artist. Yes.
Yeah. Even after we talk about commissions and fees and chipping away all that, this is a piece of painting, a piece of art that's worth a couple $1,000s. We have a duty as executors to preserve that value from fire, theft, flood, dust. A cleaning lady who sprays Lysol on it by mistake. You never know what can happen. So these are things that we have to preserve, and there's costs to that. Maybe you can talk about that.
So with the transport cost, and you talked about how it's stored, did you know there's even certain paper that it's supposed to be put in instead of just, like newspaper that you would get? They make certain art paper, which is very expensive, that you have to put them in. It's just little things you have to think about if you want to keep the value the same as it was when you first received them. But let's think about renting a storage unit in the city. Right. By your eyes, I'm thinking it's not cheap. You talk 6 months, you're looking at roughly $1,500 if you're on the lower end of a small storage facility.
And you need to make sure and you can't just do any storage facility.
No.
It needs to be climate controlled. It needs to be insured. Yep.
Yes. And insurance, that's another thing when you're transporting them. These companies that are charging $200 to get them, it's not just because they want $200 to pick it up. They're insuring the drive there. They're taking the time to pick them up correctly. I mean, you can't just use a dolly to pick them up. I mean, it has to be gentle and careful. I mean, you can't just chuck them in the back of a truck. So all of that goes into it, and it costs money.
Yeah, don't cut corners here. I think I told you this story once, Janice. I once used movers for one of my earlier estates early in my career. I was trying to save every dollar for my clients. Right. So I found this crew of movers from Craigslist, and oh boy, that was
first problem number one.
Number one, they did a good job and it got done. All right, it was done. So I don't want to throw them under the bus where they're saying it. But I swear, these guys looked like they came straight out of prison. Like they were super nice, super polite, super professional, but they scared me.
Yeah, as you're standing in the corner, But yeah,
so anyway.
Would they know how to transport valuable art? That's correct. So there are people that's what they do. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to jump into the two valuable tips on how to make this a little easier, how to make this a little better if you are in a situation where you own art and you want to make sure that it's handled well when you pass away, or if you're in that situation right now and you need to know what to do immediately. So tip number one, get a hold of or make sure that the art that you are dealing with has a well-managed catalog raisonné. I know, very impressive that I could pronounce that, right? It's because I've done this before.
Very.
Yeah. I think I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, what is a catalog?
Better than I would have put you.
Okay, so what is a catalog raisonné? Think of it as the shareholder ledger of a company, or the register of deeds for real estate. It is the centralized records of chain of ownership of the painting. Okay? So it'll show the first entry, that it was actually painted by the artist in question.
Right.
Because there are some works that are purported to be by a certain artist, but he was like, I never did that.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you have a transaction record from the original artist to his mom. Then from his mom, he sold it to a neighbor. The neighbor sold it to, and you have this chain so that you can accurately track who has possession of the actual painting, right? So that's what a catalog raisonné is, and obviously that record solves fraud issues and helps with the marketplace because you know how many pieces are available and out there and who has them. So what does this mean? If you're living and you're thinking about investing in art, this shouldn't be, don't let the tail wag the dog, but try your best to focus on purchasing pieces where the artist has a well-maintained catalog raisonné, right? Because it helps with the marketability and the authenticity of what you're buying, right?
And keep your proof of purchase as well. That's also important.
And then who's keeping it up to date? This is not something where at least not to my knowledge, there are no companies like ComputerShare or things like that. There are no centralized companies that do this yet. So, for example, it might be the spouse of the artist. It might be the artist himself. The artist might have a manager or an agent, right? Who is managing the catalog raisonné, and will they continue to do so in a responsible and reliable way through when you presumably may pass on and you have this art that you want to be valuable for your heirs? Right. Correct.
And $10,000 for an art piece, it's something very important to think about because that is not just, chump change. I mean, that's a very big purchase. So you should keep all of the documentation.
For sure. And then the last tip is, and this is a little bit of a plug for myself, so take it for what it's worth, is hire a professional executor. If you have something complicated like artwork in your estate, then name a professional executor in your will. Or if you're approaching a situation like this, a loved one has passed away, and you realize that the assets include not just bank accounts, not just things that you might be able to handle, although that's debatable, but more complicated or esoteric assets, hire a professional executor. A professional executor, the fees are set by state law, so you're going to pay the exact same amount to a professional like ourselves as you would to your cousin Bob. So why not get the professional?
Kind of seems like a no-brainer, but if you think about it, we've talked about this in other podcasts, that it's really hard to be an executor. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. And this is one of those times where I can tell you personally, in just this case alone, I've probably made, my team and I, 30, 40, 50 phone calls, and we have not picked up the art yet. So I can tell you it is a very big process because it's complicated. But we knew who to call. We knew how to do it. But it still has taken so far, at least 20 phone calls. So you have to factor that in. Do you really want to sit on the phone and make phone calls? And it's tough. But all right, it can be done.
So that's all we have for today. Hope you found this helpful, whether you're, again, in the market to purchase art and add it to your portfolio, or if you're approaching this situation right now as a survivor of a loved one who's passed away with a catalog of art. And yeah, thank you for listening. Janice, thanks for the chat again, and we'll talk again next time.
Thanks.
Take care.
Talk soon.